My name is Robert Quinn Holland. I'm a brother, a son, a friend, a boyfriend, a two-time MSU alum, and the co-founder of Nutrax, a company that is helping agriculture take market share from healthcare. I'm here tonight because your health is important to me. Man is what he eats. According to the CDC, chronic disease costs the United States approximately $4.4 trillion annually. Yet the World Health Organization tells us that about 80% of that is preventable with food and exercise alone, though mostly nutrition, which I'll get into later. This means that the cheapest and the most effective healthcare system is one where you know where your food came from and what's in it. When I was 13, my family moved to Wyoming. On the first day of high school, I looked out the window and there were cows rubbing up against the barbed wire fence. My town had a rodeo. My new friends were in the 4-H club. For a romantic kid like me, it felt like I was stepping into a Western novel, and of course, I wanted to become a cowboy. A few years later, I got a chance to work on that same ranch right next to the high school. I spend my days walking miles, flood irrigating, fixing fence, rotating livestock, cutting, raking, baling hay, spending my time outside. That ranch had a small meat processing facility where I occasionally helped so that they could deliver their meat and their beef to local grocery stores and restaurants. A few years later, I got an opportunity to work on a bigger ranch a few hours away, an hour away. It was over much larger areas of land with many more livestock. The activities were similar, but horses were the main tool, and oftentimes we would ride 15 to 20 miles a day to pack salt and mineral blocks to the livestock that were high in the mountains, up to 10,000 feet. It was over these years that I completely fell in love with agriculture, or rather agrarian culture. I had never met or encountered a group of people so committed to their work, so purposeful and intentional with their community, and so observant of the world around them. They knew every canyon, every tree, every story of their land. The work was hard, the hours were long, but my head was clear and my heart was full. I wanted to share this feeling and the story of where food came from with more people. And more specifically, I wanted to help farmers and ranchers continue to do the amazing work that they do every day. The curiosity, the learning, the working, it didn't stop there. I got to study agricultural economics of Montana and meat processing in graduate school under the MSIM program right here in Jake Jabs. Following that, I somehow got lucky and ended up with a company where I built and helped build one of the largest sustainable agricultural programs in the country today, if not the world. I read voraciously from farmer and rancher visionaries such as Wendell Berry, Wes Jackson, Gabe Brown, and Montana's own Bob Quinn. What I learned ultimately led me to the business that we're building today, and I wanted to share a few of the things that I learned along the way with you tonight. What I learned is that healthy soil is the foundation of life on Earth. Healthy soil is inseparable from plant health, which is inseparable from animal and human health, which is inseparable from planet health. Food is a keystone in a system that we are all part of. Wendell Berry likes to say, eating is an agricultural act. I learned that there are more microbes in this clump of soil than there are humans on Earth, and that 59% of all species on this planet that we know of today exist in the soil. I'm sure we'll find more in the future. I learned that those microbes are responsible for 95% of the nutrient uptake from soils into the plants. They aren't forging new pathways, they are the pathway for that nutrition to ultimately get to us. I learned about the human stomach and our gut. In a recent paper in 2023, mapping the gene count of the microbial colonies in our stomach, they found that it is 50 to 100 times that of our own gene count as humans. The human gut is one of the most complex and diverse places on Earth. I learned that when a male sperm meets a female egg, billions of zinc atoms are released in a flash. The same zinc that was once in the soil that got to us through our food is responsible for one of the most beautiful moments in life. I learned that for every one pest, there are 1,700 beneficial or neutral ones, and that for every 1% increase in organic matter in the soil, approximately 6.5 tons of carbon are removed from the atmosphere, and 25,000 gallons of water holding capacity added to the soil. If we do that on 20 acres, which some of you may own or hope to own in the future, that's roughly the emissions from 30 to 50 cars driving for an entire year, or the water use of Bozeman on just 20 acres. I've met farmers and ranchers around this country increasing organic matter across thousands of acres in 1 year alone. But what happens when you don't tend to the soil and the life in it? It grows brittle and hard. When you drive over it with a tractor multiple times a year, it compacts. The crust on the soil creates tension and it draws water up from below, it evaporates. Soil at about 80 degrees holds most of its water, but as it gets hot, that evaporates. This is the Permian Basin in Texas last year in May. It's about 95 degrees out, sunny. The soil temperature is probably well over 135 degrees, holding no moisture. No moisture, no microbes, no life. To maintain yields in our current agricultural system, we must add synthetic inputs and other inputs into the system to support yields that support profit. We spray pesticides to manage one pest at the demise of 1,700 good ones. Oftentimes, not always, but often when we till the soil, it releases carbon and water that is supposed to be stored in the ground into the atmosphere. The fragility of our current food system rests on the fact that we have taken more from the earth and the soil than what we have put back in. But what does this mean for us? Over the past 50 years, the nutritional quality of food has consistently declined. Today we must eat 4.5 times as many apples and 2 times as much meat as we did 50 years ago to get the same micronutrients. I was at a livestock conference this spring in Texas. You can't read this poster, so I'll tell you what it says. It was a study done on the prevalence of lactation in cattle when they went to slaughter. 50% of the heifers, those are females who have not become pregnant yet, were lactating, and 20% of the male cattle, you heard me, male cattle, the steers, were lactating. I don't need to get into the science, but their mammary glands had developed to the point where these animals were milking. This is not normal. This is from a processing facility owned by one of the 4 companies that processes 80% of the meat in this country. I'm not here to villainize them. Rather, I'm here to help, but more importantly, bring awareness to the fact that this might be the average burger in America. We've all learned about the mighty mitochondria, the powerhouse of the cell. When we look at the mitochondria and the processes that happen in it, all 8 of those processes are affected by the food that we eat, only 4 by exercise. This doesn't mean exercise is not important. Don't just stop going to the gym. But this tells us that we quite literally are what we eat. In a study by Levine et al., environmental toxins in our environment and in our food are directly linked to a decrease in human fertility. Between 1973 and 2018, global sperm counts have decreased 51%. In a study this past year by Jonathan Lundgren, farmers today have a 200% higher chance of depression, a 2,000% higher likelihood of Parkinson's, and a 200% higher chance of cancer. I'm not here to purvey doom and gloom, but I want you to understand that unhealthy soil means unhealthy plants, which means unhealthy animals and us. But there's hope. What are we going to do about it? Well, when you invest in soil, and you invest in the 6 principles of soil health, it comes back to life. The 6 principles are simple. 1, know your context and where you're operating. 2, minimize disturbance to protect the microbes that are there. 3, keep living roots in the soil to feed those microbes year-round. 4, keep the bare soil covered so it's not exposed to the elements. 5, increase diversity. Nature doesn't like a monoculture. And 6, introduce animals to the system. Where have you ever met in nature where there isn't animal life? When we do this, the microbes come back, the soil flourishes, carbon is stored, the systems start working again. The plants regain their nutrition, and the animals that eat those plants do as well, and the humans that eat the crops. I have the good fortune to work with Stefan Van Vliet and his lab at Utah State University, and they have shown that pasture-raised animals in regenerative systems have higher omega-3s, better fatty acid profiles, higher vitamin A, higher vitamin E. I could go down the list. And what happens to the food that we eat? Phytonutrients, which you've never seen on a label, which are largely responsible for the natural flavor in foods, they explode in systems that have good soil health. We don't have to add things to make the food taste good. These 2 meals right here are under 10 ingredients each, yet half the price and double the micronutrient content of your average restaurant meal, and they tasted pretty good too. What happens when we invest in good food? According to the Paris Declaration on Nutrition, for every $1 invested in preventative nutrition, there is a 23 times return on investment. Some studies have shown it to be closer to 100 times. For the investors in the room, when was there an investment that good that you could decide on tomorrow? Disease is eliminated, reversed, and prevented when we invest in nutrient-dense food that comes from healthy soils. So what does this mean for you? Get curious. If you don't think about the next bite that you take after tonight, my effort will be lost on you. Get curious about what you're making and where it comes from. I challenge you to read the label on your next food that you purchase and figure out if you could determine where half of those ingredients came from. Good luck. As Dr. Robert Lustig likes to say, there are 256 names for sugar in the United States, and the food industry uses every one of them. Get familiar with a few. Understand what your body needs, and evaluate whether the cost of good food now is worth the long-term healthcare cost in the future. Talk with your friends and maybe a local rancher and see if you could split a beef. Just have local food. Purchase a CSA from people and the farmers who are in our community of regenerating our soils. For those of you who are battling chronic disease, there are organizations out there today that will pair you with a registered dietitian, that will connect you to medically tailored meals, and these services are covered by major healthcare providers. You have options. Lastly, grow a garden. I promise you that your taste buds will be happy. If there's one thing I would like you to remember from tonight, is that the cheapest and the most effective healthcare system is knowing where your food came from and what is in it. This is the inspiration behind Nutrax, and today our team is building the largest data set of soil health practices and the nutritional outcomes of those food systems and tracing them through the supply chain. This is giving farmers, ranchers, food companies, and food retailers an actionable pathway to participating in a new story of health. Thank you so much for your time tonight.